Welcome everyone, it's great to be with you tonight. I'm flying solo. It is completely weird, but my co-pilot, the incredible Sarah Delaney, is in the comments, keeping an eye on the chat and is able to sort of fire in any thoughts that she has as we go. Sarah is off doing continuing her incredible work of training in safeguarding. So she's working with lots of professionals, being the complete and utter legend that she is. So Sarah, thank you for just having my back in the comments. Unfortunately, she would have been with us. We're really quite gutted she can't be here because the hotel is not offering very good internet and we're having all sorts of gremlins in the system tonight. So love you, Sarah, miss you, and it's so weird doing this without you. We have so many things we're going to want to bring you guys up to speed on. There's a lot of processing that Sarah and I are having to do this week. We've been angry. We've been very angry. So I think over the next couple of weeks we're gonna bring you up to speed with the events that have been happening that have sort of led to where we're at. We think you'll find it interesting. We think you'll want to know what's going on. So in battling this utter fury, I'm going to try and put my slightly more slick podcaster hat on, which never really seems to work because this is not a slick outfit whatsoever. I have kids in the room, a husband upstairs, a mate that I can't even reach through the internet, and so yeah, please be gentle, and if you can join me in the comments just to let me know that it's not just me, the world is in actual fact completely crazy. That would be lovely. It would be great to see you there. So thank you for being with us tonight. We are coming to you from this time from Scotland. Normally we're coming from Scotland. Sarah's in England. Yes, coming to you from Scotland. Thank you for joining us here on 21st Century Saints. Now, the anger that Sarah and I have been feeling tonight, I think, is an anger that lots of people out there are sharing. It's coming from lots of different places. I'm experiencing letdowns with support for my child, my disabled adult son who's not receiving adequate supports. I am furious about conversations with LDS church leadership. I have also been absolutely amazed by how incredible other LDS church representatives have been, and I mean incredible. It's been a roller coaster. When we talk about how exhausting Mormonism can be, it's this constant feeling of being on a roller coaster. It takes it out of us, and I hate to see anyone mess with my mates. So yeah, it's not okay. It's I would absolutely define it as spiritual abuse. And when Sarah's ready to discuss it, then she'll come back and we'll have a conversation. The other thing that I'm super conscious of is the climate just now. It seems that we're in a post-Me Too movement era, and yet the lessons, the voices that were supposed to have been learned and supposed to have been listened to during the Me Too era, we almost seem to have taken many, many steps backwards. So I'm going to do something very different today. And take a bit of a foray into theology, which isn't something we get to talk about much in an LDS context. Theology tends to be definitely frowned on. We don't do theology. We do narrative and stories and doctrines and principles, and that's not inherently a bad thing, but it means that we're not necessarily getting the full depth of what we could be diving into. So today, I would like to been working with Sarah on this. So we want to introduce you to one of the boldest women in early Christianity. I want to explain that she came to my attention because I don't know if anybody is familiar. There's a kind of familiar name out there, Nemo the Mormon. Okay, if you've heard of him, if you know him and love him as we do, one of his dearest friends, the incredible Toby England, there's an episode that Nemo's done, a couple of episodes with Toby, and Toby is a complete delight. We love Toby. I feel like Toby's Scottish aunt. Yes, so Toby's wonderful. And Toby's love for the classics meant that when we had first met, Toby had asked me, have you ever heard of Perpetua? And I hadn't, and he was sort of telling me about what a badass she was, and if why she's someone we should really look at. And about maybe 4 or 5 years later, I decided to take a little bit of a deep dive into the story of Perpetua. And Toby's right. She is incredible. So let me tell you why I want to speak to her, why I want to speak about her. Strangely enough, although Perpetua was a woman in early Christianity, she is one of the most relevant voices for the conversations that we're having right now about safeguarding, and also about feminist theology, about saying no, and more broadly, the Me Too movement. Perpetua was a young mother. She was a political prisoner. She was a woman who refused to let an empire tell her who she was. And her story still speaks to us today with a kind of electric clarity. Now, we know about Perpetua because one of the most extraordinary things about her is that we have her own words. Now, I feel so strongly about the power of us owning our words and us being able to speak our words. A later man isn't summarizing Perpetua's life. It's not, her words aren't filtered through a male lens, and she's not being looked at through via the male gaze. There's not a legend or decades after the fact. This is her diary. Now, she was imprisoned around about the year 203 in the Common Era. She kept a diary, and that diary survived, which is phenomenal. It's the earliest known Christian writing by a woman, and after her death, an editor added an introduction and conclusion, but the central section is Perpetua's own voice, her dreams, her fears, her prayers, her reflections on being a mother who was facing execution. We also have accounts from witnesses who saw her in the arena, which is where she ends up. So we're not just dealing with myth, we're reading the interior world of a young woman who is resisting state power in real time. And that alone is astonishing. So Perpetua lived in Roman North Africa. She's probably around this time in her early 20s. She's from a well-off family. She converted to Christianity at a time when it was illegal, and the authorities arrested her along with other believers. Her father, out of fear, shame, and Roman social expectation, begged her to renounce her faith. And he wept, he scolded, he demanded, he used emotional pressure that's painfully recognizable even today. Just do what they say. Don't make trouble. Think of the family. Think of your child. I think as Latter-day Saints, we really understand that societal pressure, but the familial pressure, the impact on you speaking out, on you saying what you think, and how that might affect your family is one of the most common things that Sarah and I hear about how people really want to be able to speak out, want to share their thoughts, but how will their family cope? But Perpetua, she said no. And she was calm. She was consistent, and she was very clear. Perpetua was imprisoned. She was separated from her infant son and eventually sentenced to die in the arena. And her diary ends just before the execution, and the editor who preserved her story describes her facing death with dignity and fierce composure. I love that, fierce composure. Perpetua is an icon in feminist theology. When we read Perpetua's diary, we get to see a woman who's claiming spiritual authority in a world that insists that she should not have any. She interprets her dreams. She's a visionary. And I think I have just lost power. Just one moment. I will be right back with you guys. Okay, it looks like we lost momentary power there. I do apologize. Okay, I'll be right back as soon as I can pull these screens across. My apologies for the delay. When I said at the beginning of this episode that we're having a few gremlins tonight, I was not exaggerating. So I will just be a moment. So yeah, we're up to the point where we're ready to hear about Perpetua as an icon of feminist theology. Yes, so she's a woman claiming spiritual authority. She's a visionary. She is naming her own identity, and she's refusing to let the voices around her dictate her conscience. She's not being told, or she's refusing to accept anyone who's telling her the kind of woman she needs to be. And that's what feminist theology is all about. It's taking women's lived experience seriously as a site of revelation, for want of a better word. It's looking at theology through the lens of the oppressed. And we know that in religion, traditionally, women have been oppressed. Their voices have not been heard. So she's been taking her experiences taken seriously as a site of revelation. And Perpetua forces us to recognize that early Christianity wasn't just shaped by men like Augustine and Paul. It was shaped by young mothers, imprisoned women, political prisoners, those who refuse to let patriarchal systems rewrite their stories. And that is so badass. That's the kind of gospel, the kind of letter, the kind of testimony I want to be reading. That's the lens through which I can understand better what scripture is and choose then how I want to interact with it. When it comes to safeguarding power, pressures, and boundaries, a reason that Perpetua's story hits so hard today is that it is dripping with safeguarding themes. You've got institutional coercion. There is an empire which is demanding obedience. Oh my goodness, how tragic for the church. And I don't just mean the LDS church. I mean, more broadly, the church is an institution that demand of obedience would end up coming from the religious institution that it was supposed to be worshipping Christ, and instead it becomes an institution that demands obedience. Institutional coercion, family pressure, and we see that today. Then for Perpetua, it was dressed up as care, but it was rooted in control. And that's not to say that Perpetua's father didn't care. Women, absolutely, at the time were viewed as property. Women weren't seen as equal to the status of men. Today, we in the society that we live in, that looks very different, but we can absolutely relate to that family pressure. That looks like love. We're being told that it's love. Well, who else is going to teach and to care and to make sure that they're standing up for what's right and telling you what God needs you to know? But it's rooted in control, and the expectation is compliance. Then there's the isolation, imprisonment, and that's an extreme one. We know that happens in the world today. We are fortunate to live in a world where we should have freedom of speech and freedom of expression. How that plays out, we're seeing lots of issues around that in the world today. But this isolation and separation from her child is really the ultimate threat that hangs over women in the structure of Latter-day Saintism. We are not going to be able to get to the celestial kingdom if we are not completely and utterly obedient to what is being presented to us, which is always presented through the male lens. God is male. Sarah and I separately, we have both had experiences where it's been made very clear to us that our family members, they are up here, they're in the celestial kingdom, so we have to meet that expectation. Well, what are we going to do about those covenants? We need to be perfect so that we can be with those that we love forever. Otherwise, we won't. The idea of separation of a woman from her child, from her family, it's traumatic. It is grotesque. It is one of the worst threats that a woman can endure. Never mind the reality of that experience. Then we have the total power imbalances. We have guards, magistrates, patriarchs, all of the male enforcers of this injustice. So these aren't just ancient dynamics. We see them today in religious institutions, but we also see them in charities, in workplaces, political systems. Anywhere where safeguarding has failed or accountability has slipped, we see these dynamics of power imbalance. Perpetua shows us a boundary being drawn under impossible conditions. She models the spiritual courage of saying, I will not participate in your unsafe system. It's costly, but it's holy. Now, I want to just take a moment just to underline what I'm saying here isn't that we need to see women rise up and say to their families, I should be able to speak out, I should be able to use my voice more fully because I need to, this cause is holier than the needs of my family. Women don't speak up because they're frightened they're going to lose their family. their partners, their children, their parents are all in the church, and therefore they don't want to hurt them. Sarah and I, this work that we do is not about encouraging someone to cause pain for the sake of causing pain, or to encourage someone to override the clear understanding that they have that there is a cost. You don't necessarily have to be the person that pays that cost. We are here to support. We chose that we were willing to pay a price, but it's hard. That's why we're having this conversation. Yes, it's holy, but there are difficulties, there are barriers. And so we just want to be cognizant of the fact that this is much, much easier said than done. Women are wrestling with this, and sometimes that wrestle takes you to a place where I'm going to choose to remain silent, or I'm going to choose to act in a way that is much more discreet, that is much less likely to rock the boat or cause any frictions or make people think that I've gone off the rails, that I'm leaving the church. It might be that you want to leave the church and you feel that you can't. Is staying worth the cost? That's something that only you can decide. And for many people, and I just want to validate and almost honour, yes, let me claim that I want to honour, if you choose to stay in a place where you're unhappy because you're choosing something that isn't you, then we need to honour that choice. That is still the choice of a woman, and women's choices need to be honoured, whatever that looks like. But I'm going to re-emphasise Perpetua's choice. She models spiritual courage, and it was costly and it was holy. Perpetua had a tremendous testimony. We think about the Me Too movement today. When that erupted, we saw the seismic power of women naming the truth, not their truth. You know, this phrase that we use so often, I'm just speaking my truth. No, not that. Telling others what happened, naming the truth. This happened. This was wrong. This was abuse. Perpetua does this in a different context, but with the same spiritual force. Her diary is it's a first century surviving narrative that doesn't soften anything, and she refuses to protect the comfort of the powerful. She shows us that something Me Too made visible, that once a woman tells the truth in her own words, the whole structure of power begins to crack. I shared my Me Too story. I had a breakup with social media for a period of time, and so I was aware of the Me Too movement. I read many of the things that were being shared. I just didn't. Social media wasn't the right place for me for a period of maybe about 6 months. And one of the first things that I did when I returned to social media after my mini breakup was to share my Me Too story. Now, when I shared it, my son gave me a call in the middle of the night to ask if I was okay. And I was a bit sort of confused. I hadn't made the connection. I thought, yeah, I'm fine. Why? What's wrong? And he said, I just want to check you're okay. I've just read your post. And I was so upset about the fact that in sharing my historic experiences and the context in which I walk through this world, that it would cause hurt and fear and pain to my children. I was furious about the fact that this isn't just impacting me. This is hurting my children. They have to think about their mother having had these traumatic experiences. And then I realized that it's actually really important that our families, that they get to hear this, because the Me Too movement and people sharing their stories of women sharing their stories of when they experienced abuse, it always happens to some other woman. It's another kind of woman. It's another situation. This wouldn't happen to my mum. This wouldn't happen to my mum because because we keep her safe, because she doesn't go out, she's not dressing in a immodest way, she just drink alcohol, she's good, she is mother. When actually women experience this, not a particular kind of women experiences this. And so it's important, I think, that we use our voices to share those stories, to share those testimonies, to share our experiences, to help those who love us, yes, our families, even when it's hard, even when it hurts them, to be able to tell them, this is what happened to me. This is what I am experiencing right now. And whether that is in relation to the dynamics of the Me Too movement, where we're particularly talking about abuse and the harm that's caused to women, but also, do they know that it's happening in church, that there are power dynamics that keep you silent? Would they want to know that? And yes, it might hurt, but might it be something that if we have real tangible relationships that are worth valuing, it's not something that's going to, in the celestial kingdom, this will resolve itself. I won't feel that way, and my family will all completely understand that actually this is a work of just now. Is it possible that we need to have really hard conversations just now to say, this hurts me, this is hurting? Perpetua did that in her own words, and she rocked that system of power in ways that we can learn from today. When we look at safeguarding failures or political movements that are pushing for unchecked authority, and I want you to really hear what I'm talking about here. When we see political movements that are pushing for unchecked authority, from the fallout of the Epstein files to the way some leaders today campaign for sweeping personal power, we see the same ancient dynamics that Perpetua faced. Empire thinking never really dies, it just changes outfit. And Perpetua stands there in history saying with absolute clarity, you do not get to decide who I am. Activism isn't always loud or confrontational. Sometimes it's steady, it's rooted, it's defiant in the quietest way. The spirituality of saying no shows us that Perpetua's no isn't shouted, it's grounded, it's prayerful, it is clear. She shows us that saying no can be a spiritual discipline, a way of protecting dignity, resisting domination, and honouring the truth. If you are struggling to speak out about your experience, if you're struggling to tell people, when I go to church, it hurts, I see this happening, I don't have a voice, I don't know what to do because I don't want to harm my family. I can't say these things out loud. If it's about you speaking out about safeguarding, if it's about you witnessing abuses of power, we have been taught that saying no is an act of disobedience. Let me say this again. Saying no can be a spiritual discipline. It's grounded, it's prayerful, and it's clear. So maybe the question Perpetua leaves us with is this. Where in our own lives do we need to draw a boundary? Where do we need to tell the truth or say a holy no to systems that harm? And that's the legacy of this young mother from 203. Not just martyrdom, but moral courage. Not just faith, but fierce integrity. Friends, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay brave, and hold your boundaries. Good night.